You're listening to Mnemonic Insights, a podcast about environmental and workplace health and safety rules. I'm Una Jefferson. The construction industry is often characterized by high employee turnover, a wide variety of work sites, and a project bidding process where pressure can be high to keep costs low. So, what does this mean for workplace health and safety? Jean-Maxime Duc is a health and safety advisor at engineering firm CIMA Plus, and he just moved there last year after several years coordinating EHS at a manufacturing firm. He came on the podcast to discuss the transition with us. Jean-Maxime Duc, hello.
Yeah,
Thank
hello.
you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So you are currently working in health and safety at a construction company, CIMA Plus, or an engineering firm, and you were previously working as an environmental health and safety coordinator at a manufacturing firm, Safran, which makes helicopter engines, I believe. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about the difference in EHS work between those two types of work environments. So to start off, how would you say that your day-to-day work has changed after this job shift?
Yeah, it's quite complicated because I think that the day-to-day of an HSE guy or working in any companies is completely different. You don't have the repetitive activities you could have in some other jobs. So actually, it's one of the similarities between manufacturing and an engineering sector, which is you have to ensure the right training to people, the right sensitization. You have to make sure safety is taken into account, in fact. So, you don't have this fact when you arrive at the job, okay, I have this to do from 9 to 10 and then these things to 10 to 11. It's always different.
Right. So you're saying that the work is very different because you need to evaluate what the work should be based on the particular context in a company?
Yeah, exactly. You have to define your own priorities depending on the news you had during the weekend or during the week. If you had some incidents, you have to define some new priorities. You have to train people a lot about HSE. I mean, for example, actually, we are developing a new system to improve the health and safety management at CIMA, and it takes a long time, to train people about this new system because this is a web-based system, and so you want that people will use this system. So you have to make sure people are understanding the value added of using this system. So you have to take time with them to explain the input and the outputs of the new process.
And you mentioned taking the time to evaluate priorities and figure out what kind of training is needed. You've been working at CIMA, I believe, since last fall. But so far, how have the types of priorities you've drawn and established, how have they differed between the two types of work environment?
Defining priorities was quite the same thing, but the main difference is that working at Safran and at CIMAS is completely different that way, because the business model is really different. Working in a manufacturing company, you have a lot of automatic process. You have different to the engineering side at CIMAS, or where the environment is not controlled because people are going on the field, but everywhere on the field, Canada wide. And at Safran, you have like one site, so you can define the walls, and after that,
Yes.
you are able to control your environment. So the priorities are not the definition of priorities is quite the same, because you will define your day if you had some news, as I told earlier, if you had some new accident or incident. But the risk management is really different. because once you have controlled your environment in a manufacturing company, it's quite easy, uh, everything is under control. You have to train people about some new procedures, new process, but after that, the modification will come from a new process, a new activity. For example, if we thought about developing a test bench at Safran, it could be a new process, so you have some new risks, so you have to train people about those new risks. The main difference at SEMA is that people are going everywhere from Montreal to Vancouver, and they are going on an unwell-known field, if I could say like this. And so you don't know how it looks prior going on site,
Yeah,
So you have to adapt your behavior be in this moment.
of course. And would you say your approach to risk management, given that lack of control, involves trying to create a process that can apply in many different situations, or does it involve trying to tweak the process with each individual project such that it will fit different types of situations?
I'm not sure to understand the question. Sorry.
I guess I'm asking in a situation where you have this lack of control, there will be many different types of work sites.
Uh-huh.
So as you are evaluating priorities and trying to create health and safety processes, would you say your approach is to try and create a more one size fits all process that is very adaptable to different types of work sites and situations, or do you try to create new processes for each type of work site?
That's a
Does that
good,
make sense?
yeah, that's a good question. And it's really tricky. I think this is the most tricky part of our job actually at SEMA. We are trying to work by department because, you have some infrastructure department, some environment department. They're all going to the field, but the field is quite different. One guy going to control the density of the ground compared to one guy going on a $10 million construction site. Uh, those people are not exposed to the same risk. So, we try to develop some job safety assessment by department to be able to know, okay, now what is your risk regarding your activities, your task, and by defining those activities and those risks, we are able to define some control measures and so on. So I would say it's a one size fits all in terms of methodology, because we are using some job safety assessment and the same training matrix and so on, but the reality is different from a sector to another.
Okay. And another characteristic that I understand to be part of health and safety work in the construction industry is that you have generally higher turnover than in a manufacturing work environment. And that seems like it would pose a substantial challenge for health and safety efforts. How do you deal with this?
Yeah, sure. Everything is in the onboarding process. Actually, a difficult thing is that when we hire some people, some of them will be, technicians, some other will be engineers, and some other will be the managers of those guys. And the difficult part is just to understand. Sometimes we hire some people, and the first day of the week they will be on a construction site. So we have to work prior the first day of working of these people to make sure safety is taken into account. So at CMAS, we are working to develop a strong onboarding process to make sure all of the safety issues are already addressed when someone is hired and when someone is coming for his first day at job.
What about when people leave? Is there any type of process for taking knowledge they might have accumulated on the job so it can be passed on?
Do you mean like the transition of information between two people?
Yeah, well, I also imagine when employees leave, they've had near misses on the job. I imagine they have accumulated knowledge about the health and safety risks and how they might be avoided. Is there any process? Is that prioritized when employees leave as well? Gathering that knowledge so it can be passed on.
Yeah. Actually, the one of the big part of the job is to make sure that people are really reporting near misses and non-conformities and observations, good or not, but as we are not able to visit any construction site, you cannot make sure that people are always reporting some near misses, and by the fact itself, people have to understand what is a near miss at the beginning, and that's one of the main difference I think between a manufacturing company and engineering company such as SEMA is that manufacturing company like Safran were already at a good level of maturity of HSE compared to SEMA, which is at a good level of safety but still in improvement. And one of the big part of the challenge is to make sure that people are concerned by safety and so are engaged to report some near misses and so on.
Okay, when you talk about people being concerned, that sounds like a culture concern rather than a system.
Exact. We are trying to work, just to develop more behavior than a procedural system. We want that people are aware of their own risk, but also the risk of their colleagues at the job. So this is really a culture issue that we could find in any companies. When I was working at Safran at the beginning, because I worked there almost 4 years, a little bit more than 4 years, and at the beginning, culture was just at the beginning. People were thinking about safety, but okay, I will respect the procedure, but at the end, when people just, hey, I saw this problem here, I solved it like this. Do you think it was the right thing to do? Because I'm not sure. The mindset has really changed. But this change of culture could not appear just like this. You have to monitor it. You have to ensure every people are embarked in the same vision. And also, this is not something that you can see on a 6 month basis.
But it's a question of training and passing priorities on to employees. Or
Yeah. Actually, I like one statement of a previous colleague I was working with at Safran at the beginning, and he told me that we are working with people. And this is the basis of safety, I think. We are working with people, so we have to understand why they are not taking care about safety sometimes, why they are doing this kind of unsafety behavior. And because sometimes they have their own reason, so we have to understand what are their issues, and then to adapt the safety on the production, taking care that safety is taken into account in order to be compliant with all the requirements, regulations, corporate agreements, and so on. But in the end of the day, we are working with people, so we take care about people.
And we're almost out of time, but I do want to ask you about something above the level of people, something a bit more systemic. It seems like you mentioned that the business model differs between a manufacturing site and a engineering consulting firm, because a company like SEMA, I imagine they bid on projects where projects are awarded on a cost basis. How do you find working in health and safety in that process? Because health and safety, it can cost money, and I imagine it requires taking a more long term view to establish the value of that investment. How does that work? Business
It's part
model.
of the culture change in the company. At the beginning, as you said, yes, safety is seen like an expensive an expensive department, because you are You are not thinking about investment, about all of the reward you can find after taking into account the safety. But now the vision has already beginning to change, and we are actually working on a 5 years plan. 5 years plan, sorry, just to make sure to define some real goals, to make sure, okay, in 5 years we want to be at this level, at the top of maturity. So what are the different steps to take into account to achieve this goal? And that's why we define, this step-by-step process. Working in HSE, when, yes, as you mentioned, the company is bidding on some project, and maybe one of the biggest concern is the money, could be hard to deal with. I mean, you still have to ensure people has the right training. You still have to ensure that people have the right equipment. So sometimes it's part of our job to make sure all of these requirements are met. But that's why we try to train a little bit more managers, the steering committees. It's part of our job as well to have the direction commitment in this fact. This way, if the direction is embarking in our shared vision about HSE, it will be easier to change the culture as well.
Well, I'm glad to hear a shift is beginning to occur. Anyway, thank you very much, Maxime, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Much appreciated too.
Thank you for listening to Mnemonic Insights. If you have questions, comments, or any topics you'd like to hear discussed, I would love to hear them. So send me an email at ujefferson@mnemonic.com. That's NIMONIK.com. You can find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or online at mnemonic.com.